This is not only my favorite upgrade on the GX470, but it has to be the most practical as well. Today we're getting tanked and talking all about it, but before we do, what do you guys think about the intro? Should we change it? Get rid of it? Is it necessary? Let me know in the comments below, but until we figure it out... There's a few upgrades that don't have the gram-worthy aesthetics, but are more beneficial than all the light bars, max tracks, and scottles you can carry. Much like regearing your vehicle, adding an auxiliary fuel tank is an upgrade that is not only expensive, but doesn't bring the attention or the visual satisfaction that some of your more tempting mods do. However, there are very few things you can do to your vehicle that changes the way you travel more than adding range to your journeys. And after hopping off the fence and committing to it, it was a decision that not only opened up opportunities for us to stay off the grid longer, but it also took us much further out than ever before. There are not a lot of options for vehicle-specific aftermarket fuel tanks, but one of the best and most notable companies is Long Range Automotive. LRA has been manufacturing auxiliary fuel tanks in Australia since the 80s, but until Cruiser Brothers started importing them, it was not only difficult but pretty much unaffordable to get your hands on them here in the US. All LRA tanks are made using 14-gauge aluminized steel, have internal baffles, quality fittings and electronics, and they have over 200 tank options, so chances are they have something that's going to fit your vehicle. Like I mentioned before, this may not be the easiest decision for the budget-minded overlander. At $1,800 for the tank alone, not to mention shipping and installation, this will set you back as much or more than any other single modification. So the next logical question is, why not save the money and carry gas cans? Which is a very good question, so let's break it down, and I think you'll see why we came to the decision to forego the jerry cans, bite the bullet, and install the tank. First, let's talk about the GX470 and our setup just to provide some context. The tank we installed is a 33-gallon auxiliary transfer tank, which means the vehicle draws from the main tank as it did from the factory, and the LRA tank mounted where the spare tire was pumps the gas to the main tank manually using the transfer switch. I wanted to avoid a clustered switch-heavy cockpit, so I tried to keep things out of sight or at least factory looking. So when I figured out that not only did the switch fit perfectly into one of our 12-volt outlets, but we were able to utilize the old ground and power, it just brought a smile to my face. The fuel transferring for the LRA tank is all done within the factory fill line downstream of the fill neck, so it avoids not only installing a split neck, but it doesn't interfere with the evap system. So back to the question at hand. Why not just use jerry cans? They're not only cheaper, but you have the ability to share the fuel if you wanted to. Well, to have an equal amount of fuel, you'd need almost 7 jerry cans, and if you wanted to go to the Rotopack route, then you'd need 17, and once you're done filling, you still have to figure out where to mount them all. And although better than inside the vehicle, the only real logical place to put them is up on the rack, which means you have almost 200 pounds of flammable liquid strapped to the top of your roof, which is not only dangerous, but pretty impractical as you're going to be lifting them up and down, not to mention the dirty looks you're going to get from the gas attendant and the others waiting for their gas. So pretty quickly you start to see why we chose the fuel tank over the gas cans. Okay, so let's look at some of the pros and cons of the tank itself. At 12 miles to the gallon, we're getting almost 700 miles out of the 23-gallon factory and 33-gallon auxiliary fuel tank. To put that in context, we'd be just over 100 miles shy of Mexico if we drove the length of I-5 from border to border. The tank full of fuel is just over 200 pounds, which is like having a decent-sized dude in the back of the truck, but it's low and centered, so it's much safer and way less annoying than some guy hanging out in your back seat. You can transfer the fuel while you're driving, which is way easier than spending half the afternoon holding jerry cans in the summer heat. The smart switch shuts the fuel pump off after the gauge reads empty, and if the main tank is full, the fuel just cycles back into the auxiliary, so there's no chance of overflowing out of the fill neck. All in all, the tank works pretty well. There are a few small nitpicky issues you should be aware of. The biggest of which is the pump. It's noisy, slow, and even after using sound deadener and rubber washers, I can still hear the pump over the road noise. The switch it's connected to is supposed to be a smart switch, but it's definitely more switch than smart. It's designed to shut off after the gauge reads empty for 2 minutes, which would be really convenient, but it reads empty with 3 to 4 gallons still in the tank. And with a pump that delivers only half to 3/4 of a gallon of fuel per minute, it gets a little annoying pushing that button over and over and over again. Something else I've noticed is the fuel range readout on the factory display is hit or miss on accuracy. But other than that, it works pretty flawlessly, and the peace of mind of having 55 gallons of extra fuel out on the trail is invaluable, especially for us as we travel abroad. I think it's safe to say that if you can fit an auxiliary fuel tank into your build budget, it's worth every dollar. But I still would love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on whether or not you think it's worth the money in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see... You know, I always say I'll see you guys next week on 5 Minute Friday, but the reality is I don't see you guys. I definitely don't see enough of you guys, that's for sure. But you guys see me, so I guess it's until next time, you'll see me on 5 Minute Friday. Peace, guys.